that. And first of all, I want to thank everyone for coming and hanging out with us. I love this because I get to meet like the Telesomms a little bit and like learn more about them, learn their stories more in depthly than I can just in our regular day-to-day. We get to meet awesome guests like Janine. Thank you so much for joining us. And then I get to meet all of you and like chat and hear stories and share tips. And it just feels like totally the right thing to be doing. So thanks for spending your evening, my afternoon, depending on where you are. Yeah, Tesh, it's your afternoon too. First of all, I want to say Telesomm is built in Alaska, and so we're built on the land of the Lower Tanana Dene people, and I want to thank them for protecting this land, like in the past, present, into the future, and just say that as Telesomm, we support Indigenous grass rights movements for equity and justice and things like that. And then just in case some of you don't know, I think most of you know, Telesomm is an app where wine professionals like Joe and Janine, Tesh, he does the same sort of work. Lourdes can sell experiences for wine lovers all over the world. We're getting international. It's crazy. So thanks again for joining us. And basically the structure is I have some like sort of goofy questions. I really just want to get Joe, Janine, and Lourdes talking and telling stories. If you have questions or stories of your own, like feel free to jump in the chat, come off mute. This is just a place for us to talk. I have some pictures of food. So if anyone doesn't want to look at pictures of food, that'll come later. And then we'll leave some time at the end for you guys to just like, once everyone's warmed up, you can throw some questions around to the team. So how does that sound to everybody? Cool? I'm seeing some nods. Okay, awesome. So let's see. My first question, well, maybe I'll go with this different one for the first one. The first question is, gotta pick which one. I guess I'll just go with this one. So what do you guys think is the most overhyped food, wine thing going on right now or in recent history that just grates at you?
I guess I'll start. Hi everyone, I'm Lourdes. I think one of the top, I'm gonna be basic here, but chocolate and wine pairings. I found out early on that I think a lot of people want chocolate and wine to work. And yes, there are some that could work with different types of chocolate, but I've never had a good experience with chocolate and wine. And I've always found that that's a common theme for most people that they wanna explore or dive into. But
do you know what the thing is that you can't pair chocolate unless it's melted in your mouth. The texture goes all wrong, and the cold wine just makes the chocolate like congeal and it's gross, right?
Yeah,
but
exactly.
I did do one wine when I was working at Dio. Oh, hi everybody, I'm Janine. But when I was working at Dio, we did a chocolate and wine pairing. And the thing that the chocolate people told me is to keep warm water with you, or like hot water, and you sip on the warm water before you eat the chocolate, before you drink the wine. That way your mouth is warm enough to like melt the chocolate, and then you can actually get the pairing effect. So I have had it work. So I don't want you to hate it forever because it's more in the technique.
I think that's super helpful, and that's something that no one has ever told me. And I've been doing this for 10 years. So thank you, Janine.
You're welcome. This is why we're here. So you can trade our secrets. Yeah.
Love that secret.
I have two. Okay, so I guess they're kind of like derivative of each other. One is any sort of like non-traditional American, well, it's not even like, it's like, I don't want to say ethnic food, but that is like the only umbrella I can put it in, and Riesling. It's like Indian food and Riesling. Like we throw Riesling at everything, and I just want us to try a little bit harder because there's so many different wines that can go with that. And then another one, a subset of that is, I'm sick of hearing about fried chicken and champagne or bubbles. Like there's other wines, like what about Chenin Blanc and fried chicken? That would be great too. Any high acid wine and chicken would be, fried chicken would be great, because it's like the salt acid thing. So yeah, I'm sick of hearing those two over and over and over again. Like, we can pair up these foods better.
Yeah, I kind of going off the chocolate and wine thing. Yeah, hi, I'm Joe. I would say that sweet and sweet is something that I'm definitely not a huge fan of, especially trying to get like a wine that's sweeter than your dessert. And part of that is that I just don't have a tremendous sweet tooth to begin with. But for me, with a sweet dessert, I would always go bone dry but heavily oxidized, like an Oloroso or an Amontillado Sherry, something that's like nutty and has flavors of like toffee and dessert like things, but doesn't like weigh down your palate at the end of a really nice meal with like sugar on sugar. So that's one that I'm not a fan of.
Anyone else want to jump on overhyped food wine? I'm surprised no one said like the white cheddar Cheez-Its.
I was gonna say something about the like, did someone do like Cheetos or like all chips and stuff? And it's just like, that's just salt. So like, just that's kind of just.
Is that a thing? Are people out there toting white cheddar Cheez-Its and wine?
I feel like I've heard it, rumors of it. Maybe I just made that up in my head. But, yeah,
I've seen it.
Okay, yeah, I was like, I thought I'd seen
crazy. It. I don't know. What would you even pair with that? I don't know that would work very well with anything.
I think it would work with anything. Cheesy, salty crackers
Mm-hmm.
after a long day at work and a glass of wine. I think you need all three of them together. It's like the tired, the wine, and the cheesy, easy snack.
It's true.
Hi, this is Sol. I'm not showing video because unfortunately I'm still doing work and it's kind of pathetic, but I'm trying to close the computer. I'm listening to this and it really made me laugh that someone brought up cheddar cheese as part of the pairings. Last week, I took a class with some from Chile and they were really funny. I'm Puerto Rican, and for some reason, they thought that I would love a pairing like that just because I live in America. I was like, no, not everyone in America would love a pairing like that. And second of all, not because I live in America means that I would love cheddar cheese. Sorry, I had to let it out. I feel so much better now.
Thank you, Sol, for sharing. This is a safe space. Yes, all palettes are not the same. I love that.
I mean, it could work, but some of those cheeses, they have like a lot of color added to them. So I feel like that would be really gross. Just don't buy great value or anything at Walmart and try to make it pair. Not sure. Janine is laughing. Love that.
Well, off of that, do you guys we can either go further on that and talk more about what you would pair with cheddar cheese, or someone brought up like your go-to end of the day, what are you pairing with your glass of wine? Choose your own adventure.
To jump on the cheddar thing, I would actually say I am definitely a little tired of seeing cheddar on boards to be paired with wines unless they're bringing like a fair amount of residual sugar to the equation. Because I just feel like cheddar is already such a high acid cheese to begin with. It already has so much acidity on the forefront as soon as you eat it, and it just like hits your palate, that I feel like it's to be honest, cheddar is like a cider or like a British like brown ale, like the what goes together thing. I think it's overhyped sometimes, but I do think that this is perfect. Like there's just not a lot of, outside of like really expensive sparkling wine in England, there's just not a lot of wine. So like, you know, that cheese was built around a culture where people were drinking cider and like malty kind of sweet, bitter ales. And like, I just feel like that's the ideal pairing for it. That to me is like a home run every time.
I'm right there with you, Joe. I was literally going to say cider as you were talking because, I don't know, I used to be a cheesemonger back in the day. That's actually how I started getting into wine, period. And like even some of the more interesting cheddars, like, you know, when you get into like your English cheddars and like all that like fun, like funky, very mustardy, acidic cheese. Yeah, you want something more interesting than like, I get it. I'm totally with you with the higher sugar levels and all of that. That's to me like a more fun pairing than Cheez-Its and I don't know.
Yeah, for sure. I'm glad you're a cheesemonger. I used to be a cheesemonger, and I was actually a cheesemaker too for a little bit. So
cool.
That like always informs my pairing decisions for sure. Is like cheese drives everything.
Because I think with cheese, you get to see the perfect pairing more often than with food. And like I remember like you can try a cheese with like 5 different wines and 3 of them will be great. Like there's the one that's like amazing or like, you know what I mean? Yeah. And I feel like with food, more often you end up with like, oh, all of these are like pretty good, you know, rather than like that was like a mind-blowing pairing experience. But to answer your question, my after work go-to, I guess, is honestly, this is terrible. I be drinking on an empty stomach after work. Like I will just go home and pour some wine and then be like, what's for dinner? And I kind of like let what I'm drinking inform what I'm gonna eat for dinner that night. Maybe not the healthiest choice, but I'm bowing out.
All right, I guess, yeah, for me, like after work, probably, yeah, like a snack would just be cheese with wine for sure. And yeah, like Janine was saying, I do think you're able to get really perfect pairings out of it. And I think something that like, it took me a long time of working in cheese and making cheese and really figuring out like what goes into it. I think the reason cheese works so well with wine is that compared to like a composed dish, there's such a better integration of fat into the flavors and the salt and the acidity of the food. And when it's like a composed dish, that fat is often a component, but there's things like layered on top of it. It's not necessarily like one and all of the flavors in the dish. And wine, like unless you're talking something that's overtly sweet, it's so inherently acidic that it always wants some kind of fat with it. And I just think cheese always is such like a nice pairing because that fatty creaminess is so well integrated, you often don't even notice it, but it just plays so well with like, you know, nearly any wine, with the exception of like a super tannic red wine, which will kind of like do the cement mixer effect and like disrupt the milk fats. But, you know, anything without tannins or really any white wine, it's like hard to screw up with cheese.
So I wish I had cheese at home all the time for my after dinner snack, but my partner is like more of a strict vegan than I am. So we're mostly like plant-based at home. And it has been hard. Sometimes I will have some like fresh mozzarella in the fridge just for me to snack on, but that'll be daytime after my breakfast when I'm home working from home. But yeah, I think it's hard for me to like, I'll kind of go to anything that I have open from the road that I was showing that day. And like Janine said, like my dinner choice will dictate, you know, if I want to continue to drink that wine or try it with something. I'll even try to, if I see a restaurant account or, you know, try to pair it with something that maybe they would like make or something prominent on their menu. So, we eat a lot of potatoes and like chickpeas and beans and stuff. So I try to experiment when I have the energy with that. So but that's it.
Hi, everyone. My pairing is just that I open wine that's going to go with whatever I'm cooking for dinner and hope that I have most of the wine left to have with dinner, as I love to cook while I'm drinking wine.
That's awesome. Anyone else? Your go-to?
All right, go-tos for me are always like 2 o'clock in the morning pairings that like rock your world that you wouldn't expect, okay? Because if you're a restaurant person, you know that you probably aren't getting home till 2 o'clock in the morning, especially if you run a beverage program. So for me, these are a couple that have over the years like really done the trick. Cold pepperoni pizza and a Cabernet Sauvignon. Don't know how to explain it. They just work really well together. Another one, and this is super geeky, Chasselas, right? Swiss white wine, which all you guys know, you're all Somms. Chasselas and a tuna sandwich, bomb. And then the last one I would say is mac and cheese and Beaujolais. That's like, yeah, if you haven't had mac and cheese, and I have children, so you know, mac and cheese and hot dogs, with Beaujolais. That's it. And it's always those are always like the pairings like I'm actually about to send out an email in a few minutes for one of my talks that I'm doing on Wednesday. And the pairing is going to be, it's like coconut curry shrimp and like Alsatian Riesling, right? Those are great. But for me, like as a realist, it's the pairings that like, what are you actually eating? You know what I mean? I know a lot of us, because of COVID, are making making much nicer food at home. But you know, when you what was the pairing for tuna sandwich? It was Chasselas, Swiss white wine. Go check that out. Get a bottle of that and make yourself a tuna sandwich. You won't be disappointed.
I will.
Oh, I was neglecting the chat. Okay, so Doug is cooking some chicken with the Chilean Sauvignon Blanc. He says, yeah, there's not that many different types of cheddar. Brielle is in the chat. She says, yes, to Riesling and curry. Yeah, I haven't had a tuna sandwich in a long time. You have that just in your fridge? I'm like, I can't remember last time I had, or made one and put it in the fridge for 2 o'clock in the morning. Anyways, I'm gonna have to change my life in order to
man,
accommodate.
don't judge me.
No judgment. I'm like, I need to make different choices. Yeah.
By the way, real quick, Joe was saying that like he was a cheesemaker. When he said he was a cheesemaker, I was like, oh, that was the Psalms version of "you better put some respect on my name." That was dope. He was like, I made cheese, and then he dropped the mic. All right, I'm done.
Yeah, when I first met Joe, I was like, oh, okay.
No, seriously, I thought I was doing something with my cheesemonger, and he like leveled it up that much.
No, I'm just happy that there's cheese people who are also working in wine, because like I think that it's something that a lot of people, like when I first started working in wine, I got interested in working in cheese as well, and I did them concurrently. And I feel like there's often a lot of interest from people who work in one or the other, and it's like at the end of the day, they're both just agricultural products. They come down to terroir, they come down to the human intervention, and it's really one and the same pretty much. So I'm happy that there's cheese people crossing over into the wine world.
That was, I guess, my first introduction into like what's happening on the farm, how is this being produced, what are they eating, all of that stuff. Like I learned about that, and then I went into wine or like restaurants in a more serious way. And I feel like that like experience, and I was only there for like 6 months, but it informed like my whole career after that. So I think more people should study cheese as like a part of their industry practice. But
so the beginning of my sort of wine story is in Bulgaria. I was doing the Peace Corps, and my host's dad was like the best winemaker in town because everyone makes their own wine, but he also made cheese. And so I kind of explored these practices. He's just this brilliant guy. Unfortunately, he died. But like he would go out and be like, oh, I know that guy. I'm going to go ask him for some milk. He's like, okay, we need to pasteurize it. Like it was such a holistic process, and it was so beautiful. I'm so grateful for that experience. So yeah, cheese and wine tied. Okay, so I did want to hear about either your epic fail food pairing or your most transformative. And I don't know that everyone will have like a story for each, so I'll just throw those out there.
All right, I'll go first. I would say probably the worst, well, I guess not the worst, but like the biggest fail would be, so there's a producer I really like in the Rhone Valley, Hervé Suot. And Hervé Suot is considered a natural winemaker. I think Jenny and Francois Selections brings his wines in. But I think his wines seem a little bit more kind of like restrained than some natural wines I've had. And I love his stuff. It's fantastic. And even just his entry-level Syrah is a really beautiful expression of that style, Northern Rhone Syrah, like a little peppery, but this like gaminess and like blackberry compote and fruit. And it's really, really beautiful. And it's great with red meat. And there was a day that I got it and was doing steak dinner and opened it and had it with dinner. And it was like fine. I was kind of bummed out that it wasn't like as good as I'd remembered it being, and didn't finish the bottle. We just kind of left it overnight. And then the next day I don't really remember what we had the next day, but we poured more of it out, and just sitting in like a half full bottle overnight, it had opened up so much, and it was like super gamey and had this like savory beef jerky quality. And, you know, that speaks a lot to like the elegance of the wine and its ability to transform, but also like a lot of times with these small producers, people who are doing stuff, you know, I think he only has like 50 hectares. That's like nothing. There's like variation, you know, it's not always going to be the same, not even just vintage to vintage, but like there's so much variation. And this, I'm going to tie it back to cheese, but like anything that's made by hand on a small scale, like if you're making cheese or if you're making wine, really small, very like subtle differences that I think a lot of people don't think about, just like who was working that day, right? Who was doing the punch downs versus on Monday versus Friday. If it's different people, there's always going to be subtle differences and things like that. And so that's what I love about like small scale production. So it's kind of like a fail in the sense that it wasn't great the first day, but it was awesome the next day. And then probably like most transformative. So the story I often tell of like the first like pairing that really blew my mind wasn't actually wine and food, but I lived in Europe for a little bit after college, and one of the places I was in was Turkey. And one of their biggest like beverages there is ayran, which is essentially yogurt, water, and salt. And it's cold and it's frothy and it's really salty and tangy, and the yogurt's super like acidic. And on its own, it's kind of thick. And when I first had it, when I first moved there, I did not like it at all. I thought it was super gross. I was like, I can't fathom drinking this. It's like hot. It's in the middle of summer. And then I was out with some friends and I had like a traditional kebab, which is usually there, just like really heavily spiced meat, some like sumac, some fresh vegetables. And it's like fairly simple, but it has a lot of kind of like big savory flavors to it. And that with this salty, like creamy yogurt beverage just blew me away. I was like, this is so logical. Like this makes, why put yogurt on the sandwich when I can just have it as this like delicious salty beverage to wash down every bite of kebab? This is brilliant. Oh, that was so cool. And that was like a moment where I was like, oh, there's like a lot of cool stuff that can happen when you take just the two components of an eating experience and find the right like combination. And then I guess the most transformative specifically with wine was, I don't know if anyone's ever had a Bellone oyster from France, but Bellone is a type of oyster that you can get in Maine, in America, but they're originally from France, from like the Nantes region, I believe, maybe closer to Bordeaux. But they're a river oyster and they're huge and they're super intense tasting, like really kind of like coppery and almost like a battery. And I'd had them at an oyster bar here in New York City. And previously, up to that point, I'd really enjoyed a lot of oysters, and I'd always had sort of in my head that concept of the muscadet with oysters was a logical pairing, right? If you can get a muscadet, Cevet Monstreuil, even better. And I always got it, but didn't think it was that great. It was just, you know, it's kind of like a neutral wine with like a little bit of body from Lees aging, and it doesn't really get in the way of a delicate oyster. And I was like, it's good, but it was never like transformative. But having that with this like super intense, like coppery oyster, it made the wine a lot more biscuity, and it brought out like all those Lees and autolysis notes. And it made the oyster a lot more savory, and it actually had that kind of like delicious, meaty oyster quality to it. So if you ever see Bellones on an oyster menu at an oyster bar or somewhere, get them, and then also get a glass of muscadet, because it's really cool. It's a great pairing.
I guess I'll go because I can't really think. I mean, I've probably had more fails with food and wine pairing than than more misses than hits. I mean, or equal amount. But you know, maybe one of the hits I had years ago when we were eating meat. Paul used to get like dry aged stuff from his job. He used to work at a meat wholesaler, and dry aged meat is very specific, I think, when you pair it, because it could be like super funky and have that, you know, that cap on it. And I'm more of a wet steak person. Like I love skirt steak and like regular filet, but yeah, I guess like a real dry aged strong meat is like sometimes hard to pair unless you have, like Joe said, a wine that could, you know, natural wine goes well with it, I think, is like that funk goes with that funk, but sometimes it needs a few days to actually like develop and pair. So it might not pair the day of the tasting. But my transformative pairing is going to sound so basic, but it was when I first started learning about wine. And I was eating dinner at my boss's restaurant, which was a BYOB spot, and I was working for them at their retail store, and they had a short rib dish on the menu that was like a braised short rib, braised in like tomato and white wine sauce over mashed potatoes. And at the time I brought a like Rioja wine that was a Reserva, so it was aged and developed more in flavors, and like nothing esoteric. It's like very basic Rioja label, but having the two at that moment when I was just starting out in wine and the flavors melting together was the moment I was like, oh, I see the importance of food and wine pairing, and I see how this works now. And so, you know, I was 23 at the time. So that was the moment where like, yes, I want to continue to do this and help people pair wines with food, because it can really change the experience, and treating wine like a grocery to enhance that gastronomical experience is really important. And I think a lot of people forget about that sometimes. So that was mine, short ribs and Rioja.
This is really hard. I'm like literally struggling.
Yeah, you could always pass.
Because it's been a while. I feel like it's been a while since I've had like a quote unquote transformative experience. And I think that's also because like the way that I look at wine and food has definitely changed since I was like, when I worked in a restaurant, or like it's been, how many years since I left Roses? Like 2 years, but also I was working in restaurants last year, and I definitely had some like of my favorite pairings, but none of them were like none of them were like you said, like that good, where it's like, oh, I'll never forget this. Yeah, no, I stand in that. But what I want to say about it is, I think anytime the wine and the food is decent, but all of the things around you, oh no. And like all of like the ambiance is right, and the conversation is right. Like I can have that happen in the wine and the food is amazing. And then you try and recreate that like outside of the restaurant or outside of that experience you were having, and it just doesn't hit the same. And I think it's because in addition to the food and the wine, it's kind of like everything else going on around you, your server, your friends, or whatever, like, you know, the specialness of the moment that you're in that really like ties it in together, that makes you feel like, oh, this is the most beautiful thing, right? Like sometimes it's that you're trying something that you've never thought you would be able to get your hands on, like a special oyster, you know what I mean? Like sometimes I think that's the specialness that ties everything together. And I'm personally much more interested in like those special moments that are like highlighted by food and wine than the food and wine itself, if that makes sense.
That makes a lot of sense. The other day I was on a video chat with a friend that I haven't seen in years, and wine was flowing and I wasn't eating anything with it. But that moment of just like conversation, and the wine just wasn't too much of anything, and I was just going down. So I didn't feel great the next day, but that moment. So thank you, Janine, for like saying that and sharing that, because like that is the added experience that no one talks about. So I'm so happy you said that.
And right as you're saying that, Janine, Mary was in the chat saying, still trying to recreate these Albarino and oysters that she had in Spain. And I totally get that, where it's like the memory, the moment, the place, the people, and the food and wine. Yeah, for sure. Does anyone else have a transformative or fail moment that they want to talk about?
Okay, I think that when you're a song, you have a ton of fails. So were you going to say something? Go ahead and say it.
I was gonna say, I just realized that everyone on this call is a sommelier. I am not. I just happen to be someone who loves wine.
We all just drink a lot.
I drink a lot. My followers on Instagram is getting really funny because I get people who are sommeliers or people who have a wine business or who are winemakers. Maybe they think I am in the wine industry. So I've been making these transformative connections through wine in the times of COVID, I guess. But my transformative pairing, there was this wine that I had exactly a year ago. I was in South America. I took a trip to Chile and Argentina. I call it the trip that changed my views on wine. I went there because I wanted to visit Mendoza. My parents, all they drink is Malbec, so I thought that I had to go to Mendoza, but I ended up falling in love with Chilean wines. I had this orange wine that probably you guys, if you like Chilean wines and orange wines, you had it. The producer is Maturana. Has anyone had wines from Maturana here? No, they're really amazing. So they have a orange wine. It's a Torontel. And that was the first orange wine that I had from Chile. I spent like 3 months trying to guess which one was it. I even messaged the sommelier who was at the restaurant that night, and he gave me another wine. I bought that one, and it turned out to be not that one. And I kept searching for it until one time I find on my old pictures from that trip a snap from the menu. I was like, oh, that was it. So I had it again with just regular parrillada food like chorizo, churrasco, but it wasn't that amazing. It was still good. Because I don't know much about wine, I will steer away from doing anything crazy with it. Like I have heard a lot that orange wines, they don't get along with spicy food. But there is this recipe that I made up. It's a stew with fish. It's a little bit spicy, but the flavors are well balanced. You don't have that like heat coming at you in an aggressive way. And I thought that maybe it would go well with the wine, and it really did. So much that all the times that I made the recipe again for the food blog, I opened the other bottle that I had of it just to have that experience all over again. So yeah, it's a gorgeous wine. If you are into orange wine, you should definitely try that one. There you have it. Okay, that's it. I feel very awkward now. And this will go on YouTube. Damn it, I didn't comb my hair. It's great.
I love it. Tesh, you were going to share. What do you got?
I think I was going to share. So I've been doing food and wine pairing for a long time. So I kind of got like my first beverage program. Well, I don't want to say my first like big boy beverage program was like at a restaurant called The Kitchen. And that was like, hey, you're in charge of this, right? And when I got there, I loved food and wine. I had been in the restaurant industry already for many, many years. But the one that like really like, you know, have those like, damn, that was so amazing, I killed it kind of things, right? Like it was so good. Was okay. So what's the name of that Somm, Vanessa, who was in the last video that I was in? His name his handle is like Bigwig. Chris was talking about a champagne, Mousse et Phil, which is 100% Meunier. And I actually paired that with a frog leg green garlic veloute. Bro, I know. Yeah, I know. But like, it was one of the best pairings I think I've ever had in my life. Like, something about that champagne just really worked incredibly well with this dish that chef had created. And to this day, for me, it was like, I had already been doing food and wine pairing. It was like, oh yeah, this is just, you know, food and wine, they go together, right? And you do stuff that makes sense. But that one, for whatever reason, on that particular day, my hair must have been just right when I looked in the mirror before I went onto the floor. When I tried that together, it blew my mind.
That's awesome. All right. I feel like we should maybe look at some pictures of food And then people can just jump in with something they might consider pairing with that. We've already had trash talk about like Alsatian racelings with ethnic food, cheddar cheese, and fried chicken with caviar. So some of these are in here, so you guys can just skip right over them. One thing I want to say is, I forgot to say in the beginning, is that we're donating money to our local food banks. So for Janine, Lourdes, myself, and Joe, for the number of people who are coming, seeing as we're like under 10 all round up. But we're all super privileged to be able to hang out and have internet and homes and food and wine. And so I want to make sure that, you know, we at least do something to people who are really struggling meal to meal. So anyways, throwing that out there before we dive into our like hedonistic Instagram pleasure journey. Okay, I gotta share screen now. Let's see. Okay, this one. All right, can you guys see that? Can you see it big? All right, cool. Joe's nodding. So you can see a lot of nights and weekends went into this one. So basically, I just made this master list of things that I wanted to throw out there. Some curveballs, some just like classics. And I figured I could just scroll through, and whenever Janine or Joe or Lourdes see something that they want to pair with, just come on mic. And if you want to get more information, you can click on it and we can like see what they wrote about it. I already told Joe about this. This is a homemade Crunchwrap Supreme. And actually me and my partner have been making these in the pandemic. Amazing. I wasn't raised with like fast food at all. Like I'm always like, we were poor, so we didn't have fast food. But then other people are like, we were poor, we had fast food. So I don't know what our reason was for why we didn't have fast food. But anyways, so I don't know anything about Taco Bell, and I discovered it through these homemade Crunchwraps. So I will scroll, and for Lourdes' sake, imagine that things are vegan if they are obviously not vegan.
I've actually gotten pretty good at like creating the vegan compromise to many foods, including a Crunchwrap Supreme. But I also put chips on everything, so.
All right, Vanessa, can you scroll back up? There was a plate of like anchovies or maybe sardines. Yeah, right there. All right, so if people are not a fan of sardines and or not a fan of dry sherry, which I feel like is just a large percent of the world outside of a very small part of southern Spain, but it's a really awesome pairing because sherry has this like super specifically dry sherries. It can be Amontillado Oloroso, like an oxidized one, or it could be Fino Manzanilla. I think I probably prefer a Fino Manzanilla because they have a little bit more of that sort of like buttery nuttiness because of the floor they're aged under. And they're less kind of like walnutty and toffee, but that sort of like buttery nuttiness is like the perfect bitterness to go with that sort of oily kind of bitter fishiness that like anchovies, sardines, mackerel, a lot of the small fish have. And it's awesome. It's such a good pairing. It makes the wine taste like super vibrant and fresh. And the whole kind of reason for sherry being the way it's being made the way it is in the Solaire system is that like Palomino, the grape it's often made from, is thought of as not being like a very, like, you know, it's not like a showstopper of a grape. It's kind of neutral in its flavor profile. But with like an oily fish, it really brings out like some vibrant, like citrusy notes in it. And it definitely makes the oysters taste a lot less, or not the oysters, the sardines and anchovies taste a lot less bitter, and you get more of that kind of like savory umami fish flavor coming through. So that's definitely one that I would encourage people to try for sure.
Actually put that one there for you. Because Zoe told me that you had made her some sardines at some point. Anyways, okay, so I'm scrolling up. Guys, tell me when you want me to stop. And if you need me to make it bigger, let me know. I'm also revealing my own food interests.
Was there a Cuban sandwich there?
There is a pressed something.
I mean,
we can just go pretend it's a Cuban.
Is that a Cubano?
No, yo no creo que sea cubano.
No, it's not, man.
Caribbean Presties. Oh wait, our version
right.
is Cubano. But it's
Okay.
West Indian flavor profile.
Gotcha. Well, since it looks like a Cubano for me, and I am half Cuban, and I'm always trying to pair Cuban food and wine, I don't know. Recently, I had one of my pet nats. I don't have a bottle of it here, but pet nat obviously is the new hip sparkling, but can be really good, or they are really good if you don't like super intense bubbles. Which I like champagne, but and Cremant and other sparkling wines, but I kind of like when the bubbles are a little bit on the moussier side and something that's not so prevalent in terms of the characteristics. So Cuban sandwich with like a rosé pet nat or like a skin contact pet nat is on my mission. So I haven't done it yet. I had a pet nat and I've had Cuban sandwich before because I'm more flexitarian, and that's when I will fold for my plant-based at home ways. But when I'm out, girls getting Cuban sandwich. So viva la Cuba.
When you're out, you're out.
What is the one in the middle underneath it? What is that?
That looks like
lahmacun. Yeah.
I love it.
Oh, I don't know what that is. I thought it was gonna be like the I thought it was filled naan.
It's kind
the
of
same
similar.
concept.
Yeah, it's like spiced minced meat, but it's got some like
Okay.
those Turkish spices flavors, and then it's like
Okay.
a grill, like a flatbread, but more crackery texture. It's like more crispy.
Okay.
It's delicious.
So in my
And
head, I thought this was, and this probably might still go well together, but I've been like obsessed with lamb keema. It's like Indian ground, like minced meat or like minced lamb with like spices and stuff. And it doesn't have to be spicy, but it has like a little bit of sweetness in it. Anyway, there's this orange wine that I'm in love with from when I worked at Maidan in DC. And it was called Shalori. And I think it was Georgian. And it was aged in Qvevri, and I think it was either a mitzvana or a cacciatelli. Either way, it was like super savory and it wasn't super tannic. It was just like savory and like it like smelled like you walked into like a spice bazaar. It was just super cute. So I think the two of those together, and probably this situation as well, which looks spicy, but not like hot spicy, like flavor spicy. Anyway, I think it would be good with these. I've never tried it either, but this is in my head. I think it would be good together.
Yeah, I think I agree. I don't think I've had a lamb lahmacun, but the strong kind of earthy flavors.
Yeah.
All right, you guys want to keep riding this Wheel of Fortune?
This is fun. Is that a cinnamon bun?
Mm-hmm.
With no cream cheese on top? Ooh, apple chunks. Ooh, so this, this actually I would love to see with like some cheddar cheese on top. I know we're not pairing food with food, but I would love to see like, yeah, maybe a little bit of cheddar cheese on top. And then like, have you ever had like one of those sherries? I don't know what kind it is, but like they're almost salty sweet. Like there's this one from where is it from? It's from, oh my goodness, I can't remember. It's an island at the top of Africa, but it's not Africa, it's Spain.
Canary?
The Canary Islands. There's this dessert wine from the Canary Islands, and it's like sweet, but almost to the point where it's like salty too. And I think something like that would go with this. Like Joe was saying, I'm not really into like the dessert pairings where it's like find a wine that's sweeter. I'd rather find something that's interesting and like can just like meld into the flavor of the dessert. That's all.
Yeah, Joe, you spent time in Vermont, right?
Yes, that's actually where I made cheese. I used to work for Jasper Hill Farm up in Greensboro, Vermont. So
the apple and the cheddar thing is always like, to me, a Vermont thing.
Yeah, like I mean, I knew so many people who just made cider because there's just apples all over the place, and it's so easy to just make your own cider at home, and you've got access to awesome cheeses, and yeah, it goes incredibly well together.
Yeah, we need people to drink more cider.
Cider is awesome. Yeah,
cider is really cool,
would...
and yeah, especially Basque style, and it's good stuff. So spread the word, drink more cider.
Right, I think we have time for one more. This is when I found out you were a vegan, Lourdes. So they get more vegan choices.
Yeah, I see the avocado toast. Like, I had that this morning. Yeah, I mean, do a lot of vegan at home. I'm actually gonna eat after this some vegan meatballs, like vegan Swedish meatballs with like mushrooms and carrots, but I made like a gravy to go over mashed potatoes. So the gravy has like a super umami soy sauce based flavor, and I'm drinking a leftover melon that I had, but not from not a muscadet. It's from Santa Maria Valley, from Lourdes. Just, it's got oysters right on the label, but it's not, even when I opened it on Saturday when I did a tasting, it wasn't super acidic. It wasn't flabby, but it wasn't super acidic, but it's holding up really well. So if I don't finish the bottle during this call, I'm going to pair my vegan Swedish meatballs over mashed potatoes with this melon.
All right, so that ash-rinded goat cheese, which before you click on it, if I could guess, I would say it might be Sophia. I think that might be the goat cheese Sophia. Let's see.
Or Mountain Ebro. Sophia.
All right, so that's Sophia. So yeah, so that is modeled after like the ash-rinded goat cheeses you find in the Loire Valley. So it's got the vegetable ash running through it. You'll see it's kind of like creamy around the edge because that's how it's ripening. It's ripening from the outside inward. So these kind of cheeses are awesome because when you cut into them and you get a cross section, the outside is like super silky and spicy and pungent and like goaty. And then the inside is just like Chev. It's super lemony, clean, bright. And I think that this is, so like everyone always says, you know, it's a Loire Valley goat style cheese. You should go with like Sancerre. You should go with something from Loire Valley, which like, yes, I do like it with Sancerre. That's good. But I would say maybe get something else from Loire Valley. I would say get something like a Vouvray, be it sparkling or still Vouvray, but something that has like a little bit more kind of like richer, a little bit riper fruit coming from the Chenin Blanc. Cause I think that's going to pair nicely with like how kind of spicy and funky like a goat cheese can be. So that's probably one thing. Yeah, definitely like you can't go wrong with a Sancerre or Puy Fumé or something like that. But I would say Vouvray is going to bring like a little bit more fruit to the equation, which is like a nicer, you know, kind of does the job of like a compote or honey would do.
Sweet, awesome. I'm taking notes.
Thanks for making me hungry.
I know. I was like, this is kind of terrible. I shouldn't do this. Now I'm going to be thinking about food for the rest of the day. So we have a few minutes left, and I wanted to make sure people had time to ask any food pairing questions of our panel of experts, Lourdes, Joe, and Janine. So I'll go off mic, and you guys can jump on.
All right, I got a question. I grew up eating fast food, all right? And from one somm to another, I'm curious what your favorite fast food pairing is.
All right, favorite fast food pairing. So I'm very partial to all fast food. Fast food is awesome. It's engineered by scientists to taste awesome, and they did a fantastic job with it. You know, all things aside about its health risks and anything, it does its job. It activates all the like delicious receptors in my brain every time. So I'm all about it. I would say Taco Bell is up there for me for sure, definitely. And like for me, Taco Bell is synonymous with Baja Blast. I just love that they have their own flavor of Mountain Dew, which I will tell you right now. So as a kid, not really any soda in my house. That was something that, like, when I went to friends' houses, you drank all the soda you could get, kind of. But Mountain Dew was gross. I never really got on the Mountain Dew like bandwagon. And then I as I got older and got a driver's license and didn't, do much in my small town but go to the Taco Bell. I've discovered Baja Blast, their like unique own flavor that is, I don't know, I guess the flavor of surfing. It seems to be their PR scheme. But it's like really sweet. And sometimes if you go to a Taco Bell and they are running low on, I know a lot about the inner workings of food and wine pairing at Taco Bell. If the like, if the ratio of syrup to like carbonated water is off in the fountain machine, it comes out and it's like cough syrup. It's like saccharinely sweet and like pretty intense. But when it's perfect, oh man, it's like this balance of like a little bit of lemon lime and then this like whatever blue raspberry is. And it's just like a great pairing with how salty Taco Bell is. So I would say like something that I really like with Taco Bell is something that I've also found. So looping back to like a pairing I'm not psyched on. I don't love just like really austere tannic reds with like steak. Like I get it for sure why they work, but I really like doing like a more lush kind of like Southern Italian red, like maybe like a Primitivo or like a California Zin. Because to me, what it does is it creates this like barbecue sauce effect where the steak brings out all of these like really intense fruit aromas. So with Taco Bell, I like to go something that's got like a bunch of red fruit up front. So like if it's Taco Bell in the summer and it's hot out, there's probably like just like entry level Beaujolais, maybe even like Beaujolais Nouveau if I want some like really fruit forward. Or, if it's like winter and, there's like ice on my windshield and I'm well, I guess I'm not driving in this situation. There's ice on my windshield while I'm driving home with my Taco Bell to then drink my wine. I would definitely go with like, something Southern Italian, something that's like Alianico, Primitivo, something that's got like some kind of broad shoulders and like structure to stand up to how salty it is, but is also like tons of like ripe fruit and really kind of plays that like kind of, a little bit of like accent on top of your Crunchwrap Supreme, if you will.
Ooh, that I don't eat Taco Bell, but that because that's how I grew up. That those foods, they were forbidden in my family. Like we don't eat fast foods. But similarly to the Latin American fast food kind of thing, I'm thinking that with Taco Bell, I will pair a país that usually has a lot of red fruit and it's really fresh. I think that will give you the same balance that you're describing with the Primitivo. Just throwing that out there. Recently I had it with arepas and they were really greasy and it was delicious. And it made me happy.
Y'all are gonna think I'm boring, but I stopped eating fast food after college, or really like during college, because so I went to Howard and we had a McDonald's across the street and that was the only thing in the neighborhood. So I ate so much McDonald's my freshman year of college. And then sophomore year, I switched to Subway because I was sick of McDonald's. And then after that, I was like, you have a problem and you need to stop. But I just moved to Brooklyn and I'm really excited to have access to bodegas again. So my fast food, I guess, pairing is whatever I'm drinking, which is right now, I've got a Montepulciano. It's the Chiarelli Montepulciano. And I'm feeling like my honey turkey provolone situation with this would be really, really good. So I'm just gonna go for that as my fast food recommendation.
Bringing it back to college, I love it, Janine. I went to University of Maryland and we had DP dough or the Wawa. So I was drinking a lot of beer back then. So it was like Guinness with my DP dough calzones. And I used to work there for extra money. So I'd pair with, or I'd just slap the bag of Franzia with that. So that's my fast food, but the fastest food I eat these days are just local pizzeria spots, but or if I'm really craving, I'll go get a Wendy's Frosty, but that's about it.
I will note that I am the chunkiest of everyone in this video call. The one person who asked about fast food pairings. You guys all have your cameras. There was no thought into your camera angles. I had to work these angles because, yeah. So yeah, those were good answers though. I like it, and I appreciate the honesty about not eating fast food since you were in college. It's also why your skin probably looks a lot healthier than mine does. Again, having to work the angle and the lightings in my current situation. So,
Tesh, I think I've actually asked you for your skincare regimen. Your pores are looking great.
This
from
is all
here.
natural, baby. This is just brown skin. You know what I mean? The
Yeah,
darker
you
the
don't
brown.
ever age.
The pigment is good to us. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
People ask me my age all the time, and I tell them I'm old enough to drink. That's all you need to know. Anyone who asks about, I am not an influencer, but I love this wine to the point that I have bought so much of it. This is the bottle.
Oh, cool.
So please do take a screenshot of it if you want to, while I don't show my face. And it's from Maule Valley. It's a Torontel. It's really amazing. And the producer is Maturana. They make really amazing wines. They have another skin contact that is really good too. I also made a recipe for it. It's a semillon. It's really, really nice. And you can find that wine on Convive Wines. That's in New York City and other places that I don't know. I think like if anyone here lives in the DC area, I think Krankata carries it, but not all the time. Not sure why. You can ask them if you really want a bottle. But yeah.
So
Not
have you ever had the Cacique and Maravilla wines?
Cacique Maravilla?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
They're also really good. So if you like Chilean,
yeah. I love their petnat. It's really nice. I may or may not have gotten drunk on it on a Saturday afternoon, just because it was really delicious. I kept drinking it, thinking that it was low alcohol, and no, it was not low alcohol. It had the regular amount of alcohol, and I was trying to shoot pictures for a recipe, and I kept thinking, why the pictures are so blurry? What's going on? Why am I all like on level? What is this? Yeah, because you have had 3 glasses of wine. You have had no food. The food that you're gonna have is on the plate for later. Yeah. That happened. But it's really delicious. It's very flowery. I would not have expected that from a natural wine to have. It's really lovely. You guys should get it. If you have natural wine questions, you can come to me. But I'm not a somm. Also, we should be friends.
I don't think being a somm means that you don't know what you're talking about as far as these wines go. You sound very well-versed, and it sounds like you have an Instagram where you share these things, and that is, to me, just as important. So
Thank
just
you.
putting that out there.
You're exploring and you are sharing your favorite wines with people, and that's the most important thing. It's not the somm title at all.
Yeah, so I'm going to tell you a little secret. If there was ever a time where like a wine came on the list and I didn't have time to try and I'd never had it before, you just kind of have to go off of other people's experiences with it and things like that. And so like, whether you do this professionally or not, just having like a good critical analysis of like what you're drinking is super vital. I mean, that's also something that I think a lot of people don't realize, but so much of being a somm is like taking the feedback from your table, right? Like we talked about like bad pairings, somms make bad pairings, and you got to like figure out that feedback and why it didn't work, right? And understand, you know, people who aren't somms, but who are telling you hey, this was gross, this was bad, like, and here's why, you know. So just thinking critically about wine and like having an understanding of like, you know, the differences between them, and, you know, saying like you weren't expecting those amount of floral notes from a natural wine, like that means you drink a lot of natural wines and you have an understanding of not only their profile but what it means for wine to be floral. So yeah, that's a great foundation to have for wine.
I'm going to piggyback here and say, yeah, what everyone else said. Stop saying you're not a somm.
Because I'm not.
Because somms don't walk around and say, I'm a somm. We don't do that.
Sometimes they do.
That'd be extra snobby of all of us. We don't do that. Like, we don't walk around and go, by the way, I'm a somm. So you don't have to clarify, because you're clearly into wine and it shows. So you're doing great. Stop saying I'm not a somm.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
One last note about all of this is that taste is subjective, right? So even though I've been working in food for X amount of years and have like studied wine for X amount of years, you can taste what my recommendation is and think it's terrible, because we have different palates and we have different experience that inform the way that we taste the things that we taste. So at the end of the day, I mean, I know we just had this long conversation about what goes well with what and blah, blah, blah. And there are certain rules that you shouldn't break because the chemicals react, it's just bad, right? But most often, somewhere in between there, like your perfect is not going to be my perfect. Your favorite pair of shoes isn't going to be my favorite pair of shoes. It's the same thing with what we're putting into our mouth. So remember that your taste is just as important. Everybody's individual taste is just as important as the somm person who says that it's great, because they haven't had every experience, tried every food, had every thing either. And at the end of the day is, what do you like? What do you like to drink? That's going to be the perfect pairing.
Yeah, I just want to say that the somms who go around saying, I'm a somm, aren't on this call.
Well, now I
They
get
do
to hang
exist.
out with the cool kids.
Yeah, this is a Cool Kids Club. Well, I want to thank you all for hanging out. I know that everyone's time is precious, even in a pandemic, so it means a lot to just spend time together. And thank you to Lourdes and Joe and Janine for sharing your stories and dropping knowledge on us. And thanks for contributing to our local food banks. So triple win.
Thank you, Vanessa, for setting this up and the donation.
Yeah,
thank you. This was great. This was so awesome.
Thank you, everyone, for joining. It's cool.
Yeah.
This was so much fun. Thank you all.
All right.
How can we donate to the food banks?
I will put the links to them directly, and then I'll also donate just for you showing up. So you already did. So.
No, because like as an individual.
Yeah, I'll put them.
That was the best kind of donation ever. I just showed up. Wow, look at you.
Just showed up, man. Your presence is money. I'll put them right here so you can donate yourself if you want to. So the first one was for the community food bank, which Lourdes chose. And then the second one is the Greenpoint Fridge, which is for Joe. Janine, if you have one, I know you just moved in either DC or Brooklyn, I will donate there.
Okay, I definitely have one.
You can drop it in the chat.
Drop it in the chat. Hold on,
or you can just message it to me. And then Breadline AK is one here in Fairbanks. It's also really cold here, so people need like fat and protein on their bones. It's rough. Again, this is awesome. Thank you guys so much. I had so much fun.
Thank you.
Thank you. This was so nice.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Chat with you.
Yeah.
Bye, Doug. Everybody eats. Oh, awesome. Okay, thanks, Janine.
Oh, yes. I'm going to stalk you, ladies. Bye.
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 Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Doug is waving back.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Thanks, Vanessa.
Thanks, Joe.